Welcome to another episode of J Inclusive. Please share, like, comment, subscribe, and set your notifications on so you are alerted every time I upload.
Yo, so I don't know if it's just me or if anybody else feel like this, but I'm speaking for me. So while Trump is signing all these orders, Trump, can you just go ahead and sign the order for my identification to say trans woman? Because I don't want it to say male. I don't need it to say female. You could just put a big fat trans woman, big fat transsexual on my ID, and I will be fine. I'll be perfectly fine. So all this shit can end. But bitch is thinking somebody tricking their baby daddy. Bitch, I showed him my ID. He seen my ID. My ID says transsexual, transsexy, bitch.
Recently, a trans woman named Delicious Gucci went viral for stating that she would be fine with Trump using transgender as a gender marker on her ID. Surprisingly, many trans women in her comment section agreed, saying they had no issue with it either. But these trans women are clearly misinformed. The issue is that Trump does not recognize transgender as a gender identity. He only acknowledges male or female, and even during his first term, when certain states were offering third gender markers on IDs, the Trump administration was trying to fight that as well.
Juliet, this draft memo was obtained by the New York Times, and it stated that this proposal to essentially get rid of the transgender definition could go formally before the Justice Department by the end of the year. The Trump administration's leaked memo puts the protections and federal recognition of 1.4 million people in America who identify as transgender at risk. In it, the Department of Health and Human Services says, quote, sex means a person's status as male or female based on immutable biological traits identifiable by or before birth. It goes on to say, the sex listed on a person's birth certificate as originally issued shall constitute definitive proof of a person's sex unless rebutted by reliable genetic evidence.
You know, I was born a girl, but I've always known myself to be a man, and that is how I live my life. And I absolutely know that I exist and that my community exists.
Chris Hayashi is the executive director of the Transgender Law Center. The Oakland-based nonprofit is the largest organization of its kind in the country. Current law protects transgender people from discrimination under Title VII and Title IX.
If they actually begin to implement this memo, the impact on transgender people would be devastating in terms of our ability to just live our lives, to work, to go to school, to get health care.
The proposition would roll back Obama administration policies, which allowed people, for the most part, to choose how they identified. It could also exclude the transgender population from civil rights protections. Well, a number of politicians tonight have responded to the memo, including State Senator Scott Wiener. He released a statement tonight that reads, in part, more trans children will commit suicide, more trans people will be assaulted and murdered, trans people will be less healthy and less visible. Trump wants us to be invisible, to go away, and we won't go away. Also tonight, many transgender people took to social media. They posted photos of themselves with the hashtag won't be erased.
Consider the many situations in which identification is required. Bars and restaurants serving alcohol, convenience stores and gas stations selling age-restricted items, TSA checkpoints at airports, routine traffic stops, and access-controlled locations like financial institutions or government buildings. In any of these settings, a transgender individual could encounter someone who is transphobic. A simple glance at an ID revealing their assigned sex at birth could lead to differential treatment, denial of service, or in the worst cases, threats to their safety. Imagine ordering an age-restricted item through a delivery service like DoorDash. If the driver happens to be transphobic, they now have access to your home address. The idea that simply labeling an ID with trans woman or trans man is deeply flawed because it does not shield individuals from discrimination or harm.
What's up, y'all? I hope y'all been having a great day. I went to DPS today to get a new license. For context, my old license is not expired. I'm just thinking about possibly getting my CDLs in the state of Texas. So I have all the documentation. It checks off. I can get a license today. The only issue is they told me that they're not able to give me a license that says male. And I personally don't feel comfortable walking around with a license that says female. For context, I am trans. So it's just like, I was told I have to get a Texas order, a court order to get my license. Even though my old license, my Indian license says my gender marker is already changed, it says male, they cannot give me a Texas license that says male because of the court order. And I just wanted to show this video to spread awareness, like how the system kind of makes it inconvenient, you know, for trans people, because you can get things done in one state, but state by state it changes. And it's like, I had to out myself to people. It was a whole process. It was really frustrating. I was kind of given the runaround. Luckily, my loved ones were able to tell me what the process was. It wasn't really much help at the DMV. On top of that, it's like, if you know me personally, it's kind of like a financial setback to go through all this. So yeah, I'm frustrated, but I just wanted to take the time to shed some light on that.
What's particularly frustrating is seeing some trans women and gay men endorsing the idea of adding transgender as an identity marker on official documents. This stance often reflects a shallow understanding of the realities transgender people face. It becomes apparent when trans women prioritize aesthetics or social trends over lived experience. Trans women who, despite their transition, continue to navigate the world with a male-centered perspective. And then she shifted the conversation to dating and suggested that labeling IDs as trans woman or trans man would prevent accusations of deception. But let's be honest, when a passable trans woman walks down the street and a man expresses interest, he does not ask to see identification. I don't know any trans women who got their gender changed to female on their ID, and their first thought was, I'm about to go out here and trick these men. This issue transcends superficial concerns such as dating and should not be reduced to baseless distractions. The focus must remain on the fundamental rights and protections transgender individuals deserve. What this trans woman seems to overlook is that figures like Trump do not even recognize transgender identities as valid. In his worldview, you are either male or female, nothing more. Adding trans woman as a marker on official identification would serve less as a form of acknowledgement and more as a tool for targeting and categorization, reminiscent of dangerous historical precedents. The use of pink triangles in Nazi concentration camps. Prisoners were forced to wear badges, triangles of various colors, to indicate the reason for their imprisonment. Those identified as gay men or transgender women were eventually marked with a pink triangle, a symbol that made them vulnerable to further violence and dehumanization. Before the pink triangle became standardized, these prisoners were labeled with various symbols: green triangles for those deemed criminals, red for political prisoners, the number 175 referencing the penal code that criminalized homosexuality, or the letter A, a cruel and derogatory label. The purpose of these markers was clear: to single people out, to isolate them, and to strip them of safety, dignity, and identity. In that historical context, the idea of labeling IDs with gender identity categories like trans woman isn't simply about visibility. It echoes systems of classification that have been used to harm marginalized people in the past.
In case you're wondering what it's like being transgender under this new administration, I just got my new passport in the mail and they changed the gender to male because of Donald Trump. In case y'all want proof, there's my picture, very cunty. And yeah, there's a big ugly M, yay! Now, mind you, all of my other documents are updated to female, and I've been fully surgically updated to female, but this is what they had to say. The sex was corrected on your passport application. The changes were made for one of the following reasons: to match our record. I had a passport when I was a kid that I used once, so basically it doesn't matter that all of my other documents say female and that I've had my sex change surgery. If you've had a passport in the past that displays the opposite sex, then they will not honor your gender change. Now, obviously, I will be seeking legal action. My email is in my bio for any experts out there, or you can just DM me on IG. Because look, I am an adult and I have undergone my full medical transition. There is nothing about me anymore that represents male on the exterior whatsoever. The only thing that them denying to put female on my passport does is put me in danger while traveling. That's all it does. I'm in danger now. They are only doing this to scare people like me because they don't want us in public life. They want us to hide in fear and be scared of them. But trust me, I'm not going anywhere. Trans people have been here and we're staying here, and I will fight this. I'm not scared. I'm not gonna cry. I could still leave the country if I need to. But this saying male is crazy. Look at me, bitch. This is a direct violation of my rights as an American citizen under the Equal Rights Amendment. It's just a violation of my rights in general. I submitted a passport application that was intended to update my gender marker to female. That exact application is still available on the website to update your gender. Y'all will honor it. Trust. This is only the beginning, babe. Y'all done pissed off the wrong transformer.
The inclusion of gender markers on U.S. passports dates back to 1977, when government officials felt the need to distinguish between men and women due to increasingly similar fashion trends. In the early 1990s, transgender Americans were allowed to update their passports by providing proof of having undergone gender-affirming surgery. In 2022, the State Department moved to allow self-attestation. And now, in 2025, here we are. Understand that traveling abroad to a country like Brazil, which has the highest murder rate of trans women in the world, with a passport and ID that lists transgender could greatly put your life at risk when going to places where you may need to show identification. In Dubai, trans women such as Gigi Gorgeous have been denied access simply for being trans. And remember, she is a white trans woman. So how do you think things would go for you as a black trans woman? Trans woman Clement Haddaby, misgendered by the African media, shared a kiss with her boyfriend before heading out for an evening with friends. Later that night, her boyfriend received a call to identify her body. A beloved community figure known as Area Mama was brutally beaten to death. Her face was left unrecognizable, her body abandoned by the roadside, exposed and humiliated even in death. 18-year-old trans woman Carabello Pudomo went out for drinks with friends. A man at the bar realized she was trans, and she was killed shortly after. And these are just a few cases. The countless black trans women who have lost their lives in America tell a similar, heartbreaking story. Search my channel, and you'll find them. Meanwhile, this administration has erased transgender people from government websites.
The Trump administration is taking new action as part of its updated federal gender policies, and it has a direct effect on the Stonewall National Monument. News Force Jackie Beckford shows us what's now missing from its website.
Trans folks, especially trans women of color, black and brown trans women, were at the forefront of the LGBT movement back in 1969 when the Stonewall Inn was being raided.
But by Thursday afternoon, there was no sign of transgender or the T in the acronym for the gay rights community on the National Park Service Stonewall Inn Monument landing page.
There are also rumblings that they may also remove the Q as well.
In fact, a later look at the page revealed the word queer and Q acronym along with the plus sign were also gone, leaving only a shorter LGB and references to lesbian, gay, and bisexual on the site.
Trump and his people are trying to cleave our community apart. They're trying to pit us against each other. They're not going to succeed.
The disappearing letters on the federal government site, just the latest action in relation to the transgender community by the Trump administration in recent weeks.
This feels a little more personal because this is the birthplace. This is our home.
What this is doing is further endangering the trans community and trying to eliminate us and erase us from public view.
LGBTQ groups slamming the move. Governor Kathy Hochul condemned the removal on social media, calling it cruel and petty. The Park Service has not made any comments about the removal of the letters.
American people can barely afford groceries, can barely afford rent and gas, and yet we are criminalizing trans people simply for existing.
The pink, blue, and white transgender flag also nowhere on the website.
This is not just an abstract concern. History has shown us what happens when governments impose identity markers on already vulnerable groups. These restrictions are just the beginning, and we must reflect on the consequences before embracing policies that turn identity into a target. If you care about your trans life, your trans sisters, and the legacy of those who fought for your rights, women who, before their deaths, heard slurs instead of their names, educate yourself, stand up, and continue fighting. You have the right to live your life. Don't let anyone take that from you.